Hello and welcome into my latest live video. Today is the 5th of July, 2021. My name is Kerry Holzman. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I've got a fun one to show you, which there's a problem with installing Windows 10, which is pretty rare. And this is one of the Veterans Giveaway computers that I started working on, oh gosh, it was probably 8 months ago. And when it had this problem, I set it to the side until I had time to make this video. And before I get started, I want to give a shout out to Grandma Gina. You know, I'm a big fan of Bon Appetiti. That's the name of the YouTube channel that Grandma Gina shows real authentic Italian cooking. Old school. Like she makes big quantities, uses her bare hands. There's no food gloves or anything like that. This is the way it was done. And she just has like an endless supply of recipes. She's had the YouTube channel for several years, and I think she's absolutely fantastic. I was getting the mail the other day, and I had this package in the mail. It had this book, Cooking with Grandma Gina, and I said, wow, what a great idea this is. These are basically all the recipes that she's shown on YouTube, and this is the YouTube channel is sort of a family venture. And somebody had the brilliant idea of taking these recipes from YouTube and then putting them into a book format. So it's a lot easier to follow along. And let me just bring it up a little closer to the camera. They did a really good job. I think it's about $22, $23. The people involved in the channel there, right there. Of course, Grandma Gina there. And you want to eat, you got to cook. I love it. And large font, easy to read, pictures. It's very, very well done. And I really feel like, I don't know how many recipes there are in here, but she wrote a little note to me, which I thought was really nice. And if you haven't subscribed to her, and if you like eating, you should absolutely subscribe to her. It's one of the last of a generation of people who know how to cook. And it's a skill being lost. And so for it to be forever immortalized here in writing and book form, as well as YouTube videos showing the entire process, I think it's a great service to the Italian food culture. So anyway, link for the book as well as to Grandma Gina's YouTube channel are in the video notes below the video. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, so if I sound a little off today, that's why. We've had some contributions coming in already. Let's say thank you to Tony Wallow with $4.99. Rick Lakes with $40. Hey, Rick, thank you. Joshua Robinson with $5. And Tom Jackson with the $7.77. Lucky sevens. Says, thanks go to Catherine for her parts list. Oh, thanks go to Catherine for her parts list and working with me. Right on, Tom. That's great. Yeah, Catherine's amazing. Catherine Anna Hauserman is a person that, She's a member, a very, what's the word I want? She is a wonderful example of the amazing people that make up this community that we are creating. And what Catherine offers to do for people, and she's done it for years, by the way, if you want to reach out to her because you want advice on what to build, she'll ask you all the appropriate questions like, what's your budget? What country do you live in? What do you intend to do with the computer? Do you want a fancy case with a window? Do you want it portable? She'll make sure that all the parts that she recommends are all compatible with each other, that you're not going to have a heat sink that's too big to fit in the case or RAM that's not compatible with the board. She does all that. And you know what she charges for it? Just say thank you. Yeah, she's a wonderful individual, and we're very, very proud and honored to have her as a member of this community for several years now. And so what you need to do, if you're seeking her advice or assistance or consultation, is to just find her here in the chat room. She's here regularly when we go live. She's in Colombia, so there's a bit of a time difference. Some videos she won't be in, maybe because of the time difference, but she's wonderful to work with, and all I get are compliments from people that have asked her for advice. They've had nothing but great things to say about her. So don't be shy if you're looking for that kind of help. I don't have the time to do it. People pay me for that, and it takes hours. It's not an easy thing to do. And the fact that she does that for free, and she's done it for years and hasn't burned out on it yet, that says a lot about the kind of person that she is. And a thank you goes to Chevy with a $1 contribution. Thank you, Chevy. Catherine is in the chat, they say. Okay, well, there you go. Well, you can find her in the chat if you're live with us right now. So I want to show you, I want to demonstrate what this problem is. This is an off-lease HP, what do they call these things? ProDesk or something. These are a few years old. And recently I put up a poll on my YouTube channel which asked you guys, if you think it's better, would you prefer something that wasn't the latest and greatest, something that was older but more reliable, versus something that was newer, which means it's faster, has more features, but the reliability is unknown because it's new, nobody knows. Which would you rather have? And looking at the polls, let me see if I can find the poll results currently. It was just a poll I put up, was it yesterday or the day before? And here it is. It looks like we've got, yeah, I posted this yesterday. A lot of comments on this. I'm trying to find the results. I'm still getting used to this creating posts thing on YouTube. And I know the results are here somewhere. I can find them easily when I'm not looking for them. What I find quite interesting was the overall pattern was it seemed that people that were older were sort of done with trying to find and resolve gremlins and weird issues, and that speed ultimately doesn't amount to much difference. It doesn't make it worth it. Now, if I look at the poll results, clearly if you're a gamer, you want if you're playing the latest games, presumably, you want to have the best hardware possible for that. And the games themselves, if they're new games, those can crash for no reason other than it's just they rushed the game out, right? Cyberpunk 2077 is an example of that. But one of many examples, but one of the most recent examples nonetheless. And yeah, I'm having a hard time finding the poll results here. What was interesting is I was trying to gauge how the YouTube audience compares to the customers that I have in my business. So my customers generally want something, you know, when they're ordering something new. Oh, I see. I didn't turn it into a poll. I screwed it up. It's supposed to be a poll. So that's why there's 58 comments. I see. I posted wrong. So anyway, I'll repost that so you can put your feedback in there. But it was more or less, if you look at the comments, it's mostly people saying, I'd rather have something older and reliable. Of course, people that are really detailed want to know just how old are we defining as old, but clearly capable, right? But there does reach a point when you're doing something with older hardware that the older hardware becomes more troublesome than something new and cutting edge. There's a cutoff point. You know, Windows 10 is far more advanced than Windows 7. And Windows 7 is far more advanced than Windows XP, which was far more advanced than Windows 95, which was far more advanced than DOS. So if you, or Windows 3.1 for that matter. The analogy I like to use is if you were to buy a car and you bought whatever you needed at that time, some little compact car, you didn't care about power, you just wanted gas mileage and you wanted something cheap. And now 10 years later, you're like, there's nothing wrong with this car, so I'm going to keep this car. It's required no repairs. So you took the money you saved and you bought a boat. And now you're trying to tow the boat with that little car, which was never designed to tow that boat, nor were you intending to tow a boat. Like when you bought the car 10 years earlier, let's just say, you never thought about it. But now, because the car's been so reliable and you save so much money on repairs or replacing the car, you bought this boat. And now you're finding out that that car is no longer adequate for your needs. And now the car's struggling to hit the speed limit or to go up a hill, or perhaps blew a gasket. And now you're spending money on repairs that you weren't doing before because you're using it in a way that you weren't using it before. And it wasn't designed for that. So when you take a computer that was built 10 years ago and you put Windows 10 on it, it may or may not run because the hardware engineers that developed the hardware never knew what the requirements for Windows 10 would be, how many more millions of lines of code Windows 10 would have, and how resource hungry Windows 10 would be compared to what was available 10 years ago or 20 years ago, depending on how far back you want to go. So there's always a cutoff point. And it generally happens when you start using that device in a way it was never intended. So, for example, if you never bought the boat, the car would continue to run continually as you would expect. But you've changed what you're using the car for. You're changing the job. On a computer that was running Windows 95 that you're trying to get Windows 10 on to save a buck because there's nothing wrong with the computer, that's the logic I hear. You've now created a huge potential headache in most cases to try and find drivers. And then even when it does run, it is dog crap slow, horribly slow. And so I understand that some people, for whatever reason, can't come up with $150 and they can't save money and they're impatient and they want it now. So they would rather suffer with something older and force it to work. Never mind all of the security concerns that all that older hardware is going to have with it. They feel like they're beating the system when in fact it's completely squandering and devaluing their time, in my opinion. And when those people want help, it's not a sustainable business model to help people for free. How do you stay in business? It's not that you don't want to, right? It's just it's not a charity organization. And while I do give back to the community, if I helped everybody for free that asked, I wouldn't have time to even make a video. And they generally won't stop asking because the older hardware, all you're doing is moving from one problem to the next problem. And there gets to be a point where just buying an off-lease computer like something like this is ultimately cheaper and faster than getting something new and cutting edge. And this is already matured. It's already burned in, if you will. It's already been tested. And in the long run, the people with the least amount of money who can least afford, in their minds, to replace their computer will spend 2 to 3 times more with time and frustration, and it'll take them much longer to do anything on that computer and potentially have their identity stolen or ransomware attack because of the exploits that exist potentially in older hardware, that they will end up being the ones who spend the most. It's almost like credit. The people with the least amount of credit get charged the most amount of interest. The ones who can least afford to pay it pay the most. And that holds true in my experience with computers. And I hope that you understand you're making a sacrifice one way or the other. One way is a sacrifice that resolves the problem for a couple of years by buying a newer machine, but it doesn't have to be brand new. These are $150 all day. Or that you continue to be stubborn and keep something old that continually is a cause of frustration. And even when it's working, is often insecure and performs slowly. I've seen people with older computers that can't even take advantage of their internet speed. So they're paying for this faster internet speed month after month after month, but their computer's unable to attain the maximum speed because of its age. And that's just weird to me. But I share that with you because I have a unique perspective being in the trenches and working with the public, and then of course the emails that I get. And those are the people in my experience that are the most demanding people, and they're the ones that I would go out of business if I allowed them to burden me with some computer that should be repurposed in some other way. You know, put Linux on it, do something else with it. Don't try and have Windows 10 run on it. And I want to demonstrate this problem right here, right now with this computer. Now, I want you to know that I've done about 47, 48 of these. So what makes this one different? I want you to think about that as I demonstrate this problem, because this one will not accept Windows 10. Gerardo Quintaro contributes. Quintana. Man, I'm just butchering your name all over. I'm sorry, Gerardo. He says, hello from San Diego. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Gerardo. And thank you for the contribution, $19.99. I appreciate that very much. So what we're going to do is, I've got my Windows 10 installation media right here, and I'll plug it in the back. There's a solid state drive inside that's been completely wiped clean. Everything is used, right? This is all used equipment. The RAM and motherboard, the power supply, the case, the SSD, it's all used equipment. This is the stuff that I give away to the veterans, right? And people in need. Many of you watching may have one of these. I may have sent that to you. And that's, of course, thanks to the contributions, as we're witnessing here in the chat room today, of those generous folks that make this giveaway possible. One of the things I do before I give them away is I make sure that they have a nice clean install of Windows 10 Professional that's activated, and then it's optimized and tuned up and ready to plug and play. It'll have all the Windows updates, all the latest drivers. And of course, the first step is installing Windows. Now, this is a very time-consuming process. Just the acquisition of the computer is the easy part. The time-consuming part is waiting for Windows 10 to install, waiting for the updates to download and install, doing all the optimization. It takes several hours for each machine. And I do them all personally by hand as a way to audit and ensure that everything's working like it should, so I can ship it with confidence in the same way I ship any other computer, that it passes every test that is configured exactly the same, only we're using older hardware. So let me go over to these have a display port, but we're going to bring up this computer's output right now, which I have. Here it is. And then I will take my video and we'll just put me in a corner, like right about there. I guess that'll work. And let's turn this on. I've already got the keyboard and mouse attached. And because the solid state drive that's in here has been wiped clean, the only possible boot option that this can boot from is the Windows 10 installation media, the flash drive I just plugged in. So if we wait just a moment, and again, going back to older machines, you're going to be waiting longer for everything like that to occur. So here we go. It should be powering up here. You can see the cursor blinking up in the left corner. Again, it's older hardware, so you're going to have to be patient. Now, the good news is with these machines, once Windows 10 is installed and you get through all of that, it actually runs pretty well, considering its age. These machines are probably 5 or 6 years old. They probably have another 3 or 4, maybe 5 years left in them. We'll have to see how they work with Windows 10 or Windows 11. They may not even work on Windows 11, but we'll wait and we'll find out. So I'm just waiting for the BIOS is going to try and find different things to boot from. More modern computer, this would obviously, as I mentioned, go a lot faster. So we'll just kind of sit idly by and wait. It'll just be a moment here. Still, this is normal. Again, it's older hardware, so we're just going to be patient. Exciting. This is why when you do this professionally, if you want to earn a living doing this, you're going to need multiple benches. You're going to want to be able to work on multiple machines simultaneously. So when I turn this one on, I can walk over to another bench and continue working. And then this one will just wait for me until the one that I'm working on needs some time to process something. I come back over here and pick up where I left off. But we'll just continue to wait. My thanks to Nicholas Menard, contribute $5 Canadian. Hey, Carrie, great to see you again. Who knew I had an uncle that far away? Always love what you do and keep up the great work, my friend. Hey, Nicholas, thank you. Thank you for supporting the channel. So I'm still, I'm even surprised that this is taking as long as it is, but let me just double check here. Let me step around the back and make sure I've got the USB is plugged in. It's just all a waiting game. This is extraordinarily frustrating if you've got a lot to do. Like me, I've got so many projects to do, and you can imagine how maddening it is that, once this thing is up and running, it's very time consuming to get all the updates. Everything's going to run slower. Installing the updates is going to take longer, and even just booting it takes longer. And if you got nothing but time, good for you. But if you're trying to stay in business, you will quickly go out of business by going slow. Michael McAllister with a $1 contribution. Hey, Michael, thank you for that. And yeah, I'm just going to keep waiting. I don't know, maybe hit the enter key, something. I can hit maybe F9, I think, on this keyboard. I knew this took a while when I ran the tests on this before the broadcast, but I don't remember it taking this long. But I probably wouldn't have stayed here trying to fill in the silence with something to say. I'd probably just walk away. So one thing I can try on this machine, if I hold the power button in and turn it off, switch is off now. I'll turn this back on and I'll hit F9 on the keyboard, and that'll bring up our boot menu on the HP. Now your system, whatever your key might be for the boot menu, is maybe different. But I know on these it's F9. Once again, you can see we boot, we see the BIOS initialize, then it just gets to this blinking cursor in the upper left corner. And by starting over now, rather than being patient and waiting, I may have just doubled the amount of time it's going to take by being impatient. Maybe. This does take a little bit, though. But it's important that you see it happen right from the beginning. I want you to see the install, and I want you to see where it crashes, and I want you to see the error message. That's why this wasn't already set with the error and me just showing you. Because then, you might say, well, how did you get here? And then you just have to take my word for it. A lot of people skip through the videos, or they read the subject matter and then they leave comments without ever watching anything, because, it's important that they be heard, even though they can't be bothered to get all the information first. But that's YouTube. But by doing it this way, there's no excuse for not knowing it. So we'll just wait it out this time. Chevy with another $1 contribution. Thank you, Chevy. Disney fan wants me to try hitting escape. We can press escape. I don't think it's pretty much, it's waiting for something to time out. But the solid state drive inside is the only, well, it's got an optical drive too. But it's got the optical drive, the solid state drive, and then the flash drive. Those are the only 3 potential storage devices it can boot from. So I'm not quite sure why this is taking as long as it is, but we'll get there. And like I said, this is not a process that will be the same every time. It's just because it's, for one reason or another, it's trying incessantly to boot from something that's not there, and it will eventually give up and move to the next boot item. Once we get Windows 10 installed, it'll boot much, much faster, because it'll try to boot from the solid state drive, which will then have an operating system on it, and it won't sit here waiting for it to time out. Marty Yoels contributed $20. Hey, Marty, thank you. Marty says, hello, Carrie in chat. Hey, Marty, good to see you, my friend. Sometimes the USB plug that you plug into can have an issue with whatever USB device you're plugging in. This is more common with cheaper USB flash drives, budget USB flash drives, and of course, budget computers. And I'm seeing less and less of that as more of those older computers are being retired, recycled, and the newer machines are less likely to have a problem, but it's still a possibility. One thing I can show you is if I turn the machine off, and then I'll turn it back on again, and now we'll go to F2, I think it's F2, should take us into the BIOS. Let's just double check to see what's going on there. Escape key for startup menu. But F9, well, F9 is a boot menu. A startup menu and a boot menu. Startup menu can offer you other things besides the boot options. And it looks like it's not going to even let us do that. So I'm going to try taking this flash drive out and turning it back on without the flash drive just to see what happens, just out of curiosity, if it gets to a conclusion that there's no bootable device faster. See, it's stuck right here. It's trying to boot to something, and it's timing out. So it's not related to the flash drive. So my issue is my impatience. I'm going to plug this into the front, this USB flash drive of Windows 10. I'm going to turn it back on, and then we'll just talk for a little bit and let it take as much time as it needs, because it will eventually get through this. And if you want to start your, pay attention to the time on the video, and we can actually see how long it's going to take. Out of curiosity, I haven't timed it in the past, but I know it does get through this eventually. And once it does, Windows 10 will, when I tell it to begin installation, will begin the installation and it will fail. Does anybody want to guess what that problem is? Is the BIOS corrupted? It doesn't appear to be. This video started in 1957. That's what Glenn's Music in the chat room says. Now, if you have any questions for me, since we're going to sit here and wait for this. I can tell you it does not appear to be a power supply, motherboard, RAM. From what I can tell, those things all seem to be just fine. And I'll show you how I know that when we get to that point. But if you want to keep guessing, please keep guessing. Is it an issue with the flash drive? No, it's the same flash drive I use all the time. Planet Cryos contributes $5. He says, I know you missed my other givings, but sending more love. Oh, did I miss it? My bad. Let me go back and take a look. What did I miss? Of course, YouTube doesn't want to show it to me. Sorry about that, Planet Cryos. My apologies. And I can't even see it under viewer activity. So, but thank you. You know, I appreciate that very much. Sorry I missed it. Zen Carter says, this may not be the issue, but I once had a computer where Windows 10 failed to install. It turned out to be a bad sector on the hard drive. I don't know. What's the boot order? Aaron Brown wants to know. Don't know. Patrick Manny, is it UEFI or legacy? Don't know. All we're trying to do is get it to turn on, whether it's UEFI or legacy or no matter what the boot order is. It will boot. I haven't changed anything. And as I mentioned, when I was first, I want you to keep in mind the information I'm providing to you. It's very critical. This error first occurred about 8 months ago as I was cycling through all of these off-lease computers and getting them ready to give away. And when this happened, I figured out what it was, and then I set it aside. And I said, I want to show this error to people. It's pretty unusual. And since I already know what the cause is, I don't know why, but I do know what the cause is. I thought when I have time, I want to, show this, demonstrate it. I think it's a great learning opportunity. And, since then, a new version of Windows 10 has come out, and I thought that might fix it, but it doesn't. So I ended up undoing the fix, putting it back the way I had it, and then testing it. That's what I was doing this weekend, so I could be ready for today. So I do know that this does take a while to start up. I've been through this several times the last couple of days. But for some reason, when I'm live on YouTube, 1 second feels like 5 seconds. So we just have to wait it out. And again, if we can find something to distract ourselves with that runs in the background, we'll keep an eye on it, and then Windows 10 installation will start. Is the CPU too old to handle Windows 10? No, as I mentioned, these are all the off-lease computers are nearly identical. So they all installed Windows 10 except this one. And I was able to resolve the problem, and Windows 10 did finally install correctly. Is it the size of the disk? No, again, these are all. What I want you to keep in mind is I've got about, in this last batch, there were about 18 of these, all identical in RAM, storage. Everything was identical. And all of them took Windows 10 except this one. Is the CMOS battery good? Should be. James Bond says, I have a feeling the boot media is not properly formatted to the right format. Nope. Billy Zoo contributes $7 Australian. Thank you, Billy. Could you install Windows 8 and then upgrade them to Windows 10? Well, we're not even getting this. That's a question from Kyle King. It doesn't matter what we try and do. We still have to boot first. You want to put Windows 7 on it, you want to put Linux on it, whatever it is. If I take the flash drive out, this still does the exact same thing. Mira Ora says, is it trying to network boot on some machine? This takes a while to time out. Maybe, but I can tell you that's not the fix. Raven 4K says, don't put an SSD into it. That would make it faster. What does that mean? Garcia Boy says, I don't have a clue, Carrie. That's what people pay you for. Yeah, but you have to understand, when you're on my side of the camera, the amount of harassment that I receive from random viewers who click on my videos to tell me what an idiot I am and how they knew the solution to the problem, and it wouldn't have taken them so long to figure it out. And so a way that I counteract that is I invite those very same people that are so much smarter than me to come on to the live videos and tell me what's wrong. And oddly, they're quiet. After the video is posted and they can go to the end of the video and see the solution, do they leave their comment about how they knew it was that all along? And so this is a way that prevents them from playing that game. It exposes just how much people lie, cheat, and manipulate online. And, I'm a big advocate of being genuine and authentic and showing you the truth. And, or at least my definition of truth. And when these people come in and you don't know who they are and they use fake names and they're, just boasting about how smart they are or how dumb you are. And I'm sure it's happened to all of us at some point if you're online. I think it's important to know that most of the time, anybody that would do that is automatically not as smart as you. In other words, you have to have a certain depth of ignorance to even say such a thing. And so I don't want you to feel bad, or I don't want you to feel as though you're not good enough because somebody has done that to you. Chances are that somebody playing with your mind. And my advice to you is don't participate in it. Just ban them, delete them, get rid of them. They're toxic. You know, you can rest assured they'll die like the rest of us. And, you know, they will be equal to everybody else in that way. And if that's how they want to be remembered or not remembered, just feel bad for them. But know that anything that those people say should not affect you in a negative way. You should not allow it or give it consent to make you feel unworthy or question your abilities. Don't let those people get to you that way. That's the game. Don't play it. And you can see from this live video right now, those people that have all the answers, where did they go, right? And so far, from what I've seen, nobody has given the answer yet. Now that maybe that somebody has and I haven't seen it, but I haven't seen it. What would you do if you were on site at a client's office? Somebody's paying you by the hour, and you want to install Windows 10 on a machine. You calculate about how much time that should take on site, give the customer an estimate, and then you go out and you do this, and this happens. Somebody's got to pay for that, for your time. Like I said, if you're Mr. Nice Guy or nice gal and you don't bill them for it and you're there all day, that's how much money you made that whole day. And if you do that day after day after day, you're not going to have a business very much longer. At some point, you could just say, look, I can't do this on site. Let me pack it up and take it back to the shop. It'd probably be a smart thing to do. And in that way, you can take your time with it. As I mentioned, you would have multiple benches. So you could set this on a bench, walk away. Pablo wants to know if it's a bad CPU. No, it's not a bad CPU. Alex says, pull the RAM. I already did that. It's not RAM related. It's not CPU related. But while we're waiting, again, if you have other questions that I can answer for you, I'd do my best to provide answers. Peter wants to know if there's bad or loose cables inside. No. Nope, that's already been checked. Something to do with the USB mouse keyboard combo. No. That's what Glenn's Music wanted to know. The date of 2039, I learned from you, Uncle Kerry. That's from Jim Olson. This is not a date issue. Caesar Brito says, it's taking too long. There is a hardware problem. Well, clearly, we can't get to the software to even begin installing it. I definitely agree there's a hardware problem. Is it a bad motherboard? No. CMOS reset. How? How do you reset the CMOS? I mean, I guess we could short out the jumpers on the motherboard, but again, none of the other machines required this. So I'm going to say a CMOS reset isn't going to solve this problem because, as I mentioned, I've already fixed it and put it back the way it was. So if anything was like the BIOS was set incorrectly, it would be very difficult for me to know by when you reset a BIOS, you'd have to see what it was, what the settings were to put it back, right? So if I'm blindly resetting the BIOS, I don't know what settings I'm changing. For all I know, they're all default. I don't know. But that's not the solution to this. It's not a time and date related problem. Is it a custom OS that only shows a blinking cursor to fool us? That's what Decoder 2 wants to know. Again, I am a big believer in honesty and authenticity. I wouldn't do that to you. Trust is for me the most valuable thing you can offer online because of the amount of untrustworthy people behaving in their activity online. So to set yourself apart from all the other bad actors, the one thing you've got is your integrity. So no, I don't do that. I don't play those games. Can you disable secure boot in the BIOS? We can't even get into the BIOS. Before it'll go into the BIOS, it wants to try booting first. Is it a thumb drive error? No. Low power from the power supply? No. Is the USB plugged in? Yes. Change the monitor. Won't make a difference. It's a BIOS setting issue at this point. No, it isn't. Is the BIOS in UEFI mode? What difference does that make? Salvatore says, is it a bad hard drive? Well, it's a solid state drive. It's a bit older, but it's possible. What I do is I take the, when these come to me, these off-lease computers, they usually have a mechanical drive. Well, they always have a mechanical drive in. And it's amazing the performance boost that putting a solid state drive in these, turns these machines into something quite decent, very decent. And many of you have contributed solid state drives. Some were older drives you didn't want anymore, and others sent brand new drives. I think Rick Hubbard had sent, I want to say it was Rick Hubbard, sent like 10 Crucial solid state drives, brand new in a box. Ryan Sikowski says, can you get to the BIOS if the solid state drive is disconnected? Let's turn the machine off. Let me go full screen. Let me go full screen on camera 1. Full screen on camera 1, right here. Okay. So I'll take the keyboard and mouse and the Windows 10 installation media. We'll take the lid off. Set that over here somewhere. That'll be good. And now these HP desktops, they have a hinged optical drive holder as well as the power supply. You just pull up on them and they come out. Now, if I disconnect the SATA cable, I'll tell you what, let me just show you what the drive is. Let's start with that. This isn't an off-brand. This is the other thing, people buy cheap stuff. They'll buy something that, some name brand you'd never heard of before. Who knows if you can get any customer service from it. And on these machines, I will regularly put in either 250 or 500 gig solid state drive, because that's what was sent to me. So this, if I walk it over to the camera, is a Samsung drive. I've got it in a 3.5-inch drive adapter. This is an 850 Pro. So I'm trying to see if there is, do you see a built date on there? Does it say how old it is? See a date on it. I'm not sure if we Googled for a review of this drive and looked at what date that review was posted, we could get an idea of how old this drive is. And I want you to think about what I talked about in the very beginning of this video. It's a reason why I brought it up. So Ryan's on the right track. It's definitely on the right track. Now I can test this drive, and this drive tests fine. If I put it in if I take an adapter, I'm sure I have one of those adapters here somewhere. Let me find it. What do I do with it? I've got a little USB adapter I want to show you. This one will work. You get these little SATA to USB adapters off Amazon. They're $5 to $12, depending on which brand. It's just SATA on one side and then USB on the other. And I'm just going to plug it in here to see if this drive works. See what happens. Plug it in. USB recognizes it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to disk management, and I'm going to bring up a screenshot so you can see what I see as soon as I can figure out how to do that. OBS. Let's look at, here we go. Okay, so when I plug it in, it sees the drive right here. Here, wait, let me turn off camera 1. It sees the drive. It says it's unallocated space. I can right click on that. And let's see. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. My bad. I'm looking at the screenshot in OBS. So right here, it says it's 250 gigs. It sees the drive. I'll right click, say new simple volume. Click next, click next, click next. It's going to assign drive letter D. Now it's going to format it. And it should say the drive is healthy and in good shape, yeah? Let's give that a second. There it is. The drive functions, no problem. It's healthy. See, it says it's healthy, no problems. Okay. Glad we can all agree on that. We can bring back camera 1 and back to, let's see, let's get rid of that window capture. So here's what we know so far. Now, I'm going to just unplug this. You don't have to safely disconnect it with Windows 10. So this is the drive as it was installed. We know this drive works. Do you still think this is a bad drive? How do you explain that? Let's see if we can boot it without a drive. How about that? Let's see if we still have the same time delays. That'd be a good place to test. So once again, I'm going to go back to camera 1. And we'll not minimize, but we'll move myself up here like so. Okay. Now I'm going to turn this back on. And again, I don't have to set this stuff down. It's fine. It can operate this way as long as you're careful. Now, look how fast it came up with a non-system disk or disk error. It's pretty interesting, right? Well, now that we've formatted this, do you think that would make a difference? I don't know. It's pretty unusual. Since we know the drive works, it's pretty unusual that when all I have to do is plug this drive in, and I know the cables are fine. There's nothing wrong with any of the cables. And I'll get to how I know that in a moment, but for now, humor me. I'm not even going to screw that down. Just set it in there. It's fine. Turn this back on. Let's see if its behavior is any different. Now remember, I still haven't plugged in the Windows 10 installation media. All I've done is put the drive in. And you can see we're already having a problem. Like we already have gone through this before, where what I mean to say is we had already gotten the message that there was no bootable device by now. We're not having to wait this long for something to happen. So one thing we can try, if I turn this off, turn it back off again. And again, I'm going to go back to full screen on camera 1 here. There we go. Take this back out. Now, as I mentioned, when working with this, the error message was that Windows 10 couldn't update something like the boot MGR or something along those lines. And I'm going to try one thing here. Sometimes if people put these in a RAID array or they alter the protected area of the drive, just erasing the partition isn't enough. You have to clean the drive. Now, I haven't tried this. I really don't know what's going to happen, but we'll plug this right back in again. And of course it works. It pops up. It's all formatted. It's happy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open an elevated command prompt. What I'm typing in the search, little white box CMD, and then it offers me command prompt. I right click on that option and choose Run as Administrator. Then I'll click Yes. And now I should be able to share that screen with you so you can follow along with what I'm about to do. Now I already have a video demonstrating this. And again, I don't know if this is going to solve the problem. I haven't gotten around to it because I was expecting to get past that blinking cursor and to get to the Windows 10 installation. And it's just not happening now. So whatever it is, it's gotten worse. So I got nothing to lose at this point. So I want to clean the drive, which means to remove all of the host protected area information, remove the partitions, just completely set it back to how this drive was as it came from the factory the first time it was removed from the box. And to do that, as I mentioned, I already have a quick tips video on this, but we're going to do it live right now. This is a very dangerous utility that you should not take lightly. Because if you do it wrong, if you select the wrong drive, your stuff's gone, right? So we're going to be very cautious about how we use this tool. So here is the command prompt, which is what I need, elevated. And I'm going to type in Diskpart. It's an old school DOS command. And then I'm going to type in list space disk, and I'll see the installed drives. So disk 0 is my internal SSD, and disk 1 is this 250 gig Samsung. Now this is the part you've got to be very careful with. We're going to select disk 1. Reread that. Make sure you haven't typed it wrong, because you don't want to select the wrong disk if you've got multiple drives. This is not reversible. So it confirms disk 1 is now the selected disk, and I'm going to type clean, and I'm going to hit enter. It's very quick. Type exit to get us out of there, and you'll type exit again to return back to Windows. Now, turn camera 1 back on, and once again, just pull this. Now this is, in theory, exactly the way it came out of the box when it was new, whatever year this came out, however long it was, however long ago it was. And once again, we'll plug in power. And SATA cable. I'll just set it back down in there. Good enough. Let's turn it back on. See if that has made any difference whatsoever. Let's go back to the output of this computer. See what it's doing. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? By simply cleaning that disk. So it may have had a RAID array on it. I don't know. Let me do this. This is interesting because I wasn't sure if that was going to work or not. But let me make this a little smaller here. And I've got my Windows 10 installation media. We'll just pick any USB port here. I'm going to turn the machine off. We'll wait for the fans to stop, and then we'll turn it right back on again. And then let's see how long it takes for this to boot now. So it's saying non-system disk or disk error, so it's not even attempting to boot from that USB. So this time when I turn it on this computer, and your computer may vary, we're going to hit F9 to get to our boot options, so I can force it to boot to the flash drive, but I couldn't even get that far before. So I'm tapping F9 on the wrong keyboard, I got to use this keyboard. That would probably be better if I use the keyboard that's plugged into the machine that I'm trying to tell it what to do. So we'll turn it on again here, and F9, F9, F9. Just press it over and over. And then we will select with the arrow keys, because your mouse may or may not work. It depends on your computer, but the arrow keys will always work. That's the SanDisk flash drive, and press enter, and now it begins the Windows 10 install. Now, if I was building a new computer, new hardware, all under warranty, it would already be done. So the amount of money that's being saved is being traded for the amount of time that has to be invested in figuring out what's going on here. Whether it's a BIOS issue, a cable issue, a RAM issue, a CMOS battery, all the things you guys suggested potentially could be causing this problem. And yet it was something as simple as cleaning the drive. In other words, just deleting the partitions wasn't enough. Wasn't going to do it. A lot of times, if you guys have ever used a drive in a RAID configuration, you can take the drive out of the RAID, but you can't take the RAID out of the drive. And that requires that clean command. It's the only way I know to do it. Or, well, there's two ways. You bring back up the RAID software, and you remove the RAID using the RAID software, which is, many people use the RAID that's built into their BIOS. If you don't remove the RAID array from the BIOS, it stays on, I believe it's the host protected area on the drive. And even though it still may work, you may notice it when the system boots up. Some systems may say that disk 1 is a RAID, even though it's not a RAID. It may be the only drive, but the host protected area, and again, I'm thinking it's the host protected area, stores that indefinitely. So you either have to put it back into the machine it was in, go back into the BIOS, check the drive status, remove or delete the array in the BIOS. That will remove that information from the host protected area. Simply going into Windows and deleting the partitions during the installation where it says, hey, where do you want to install this, won't delete that HPA area. So here we're at the standard installation screen, and I do everything the same I've always done. Install now. And you'll see it's pretty peppy. It just went from a really slow computer where you guys said take it out to the desert and shoot it, some of you did, to, hey, this thing's actually not too bad. So I go through all the same options that you see me do on all the builds I do here and the repairs. I'm not doing anything any differently. Always choose custom. It says disk 0 unallocated space. That's because we cleaned the drive. So even though you saw me partition and format it, once I cleaned it, it completely reset that. It deleted the partition, it deleted everything. That's why it's called clean. So I'll hit next, and we'll see how long this takes to install. So as you can imagine, if you want to continue to use old hardware, you might end up investing a whole lot of time. And if you don't need the computer, if the computer is a novelty for you, something to do, knock yourself out. But if you're desperate to be able to get back to your email, it's the only machine you've got and you need to make this work, again, for as little as $150, you can get an off-lease machine already ready to go. Just go on Amazon, look up like a Dell Optiplex 7010. And they're somewhere between $150 and $180. The price fluctuates. Free shipping with Amazon Prime with returns. So if the machine arrives damaged, you'll be able to send it back to or have it replaced because you're dealing with Amazon customer service. If you're ordering from Amazon, always make sure if you have Amazon Prime that you're ordering something that qualifies as Amazon Prime so you have that peace of mind. Once that arrives and you plug it in and turn it on, you're ready to rock and roll. Now, granted, those generally have mechanical drives, so it won't be as fast as this until you change that drive out. If the computer is very important to you, but you don't have $1,000 or more to buy a new machine, that's a much faster, more sane way to get up and running and not have to worry about what the next problem is going to be. And then, of course, if you don't have one of these cables laying around, trying to get that configured Or if you don't even have a spare computer for that matter, you're sort of stuck. Does the clean command also work on drives used for Linux? The clean command has to be able to see the drive. It has to be able to, the BIOS has to say you've plugged the drive in. It doesn't care if it's Mac or Linux. We're not reading any data from the drive. We're simply talking to the drive's firmware and issuing the clean command. So the short answer is yes. Yeah. I'm trying to prevent people starting to just pull out random operating systems. Will it work with Windows 98? Will it work with a drive used in a Synology? Will it work with a blah, blah, blah? Now, this is very interesting because this is the error message I wanted to show you. Let me remove camera 1 so you can read this error message. Now, you've been here the whole time. We've been chatting back and forth. Everything seemed to be going quite well. And yet, as you've witnessed, here we are. So my question to you now is, what do you think the problem is? You see how we've gone from one problem to the next problem? And while I didn't initially plan it this way, this is exactly what happens more often with older hardware than newer hardware. And the older the hardware is, the more likely you are to experience it and then, because the hardware is getting older every day. So even though you may get past this problem today, maybe the Windows 11 comes out and now you're back to having a problem again. Well, everybody else is like, I don't know what you're talking about, works fine. So you're creating your own misery because you're claiming you don't have $150 to buy an off-lease computer, which to me is a little crazy. That's a little crazy. It's a level of impatience and an unwillingness to sacrifice and a demand for entitlement and an unrealistic expectation. If you're willing to put away a couple of dollars a month until you get that $150, your life will become so much easier. So what do we think the problem is? Zelda Maniac says throw the SSD out or run Samsung's low-level format. And Michael Code says the DVD drive too, maybe. Thomas Keats says, if I was to guess, Microsoft shifted a minimum requirement. Nope, not that I'm aware of. Jason recommends disabling Secure Boot. That's possible. Jason Humphrey thinks it's a UEFI/legacy BIOS issue. Michael Cote saying it's a bad solid state drive. Doesn't seem to be a bad solid state drive. That's the point I'm trying to make. We can take this drive and plug it in. You see it works fine. So is it bad or is it not bad? So the easiest solution is take another solid state drive or even a mechanical drive. Just get another drive just so you know. I heard a great expression where a mechanic was talking about other mechanics who just randomly swap parts until they figure the problem out. And he referred to that as a process known as parts darts. Now, in this case, if you run your own computer shop and you have lots of parts laying around, it's not about intelligence with regards to being able to diagnose, the problem right away. It's about time. Is it faster to swap the drive out or to spend hours and hours testing it? If you're in business and you're trying to crank out machines as quickly as possible, customers are waiting, they're tapping their toes, what's taking so long? You're freaking out because you're spending more and more time on this one machine that you know a customer with a machine that's old isn't going to pay you more than the machine is worth to fix it. You're in quite a bind. And so if you have a spare solid state drive laying around in your shop, which you probably should have several, not just one, you can just swap it. You're not necessarily giving it to the customer. You just want to know if that's the solution. So what I'm going to do is I'll turn the machine back off. We'll go back full screen here on camera 1 again. And let's grab another solid state drive. Same capacity, right? That's still on. You hold the power button in until it turns off. There it goes. And just to be safe, we'll pull the power out of the back. So let me take this drive out. Remember, this is a name brand drive. It's a Samsung 850 Pro. This was not a cheap drive. Now, if this drive was made by some smaller manufacturer, I'd be more inclined to think it's probably the drive. I'm less inclined to think it's the drive just because the manufacturer is a leader in solid-state drive manufacturing and has been around a long time. And this wasn't the bottom of the barrel. At the time when this was purchased, an 850 Pro was quite expensive. So what we'll do is we'll just grab another drive. And this time we'll grab a lesser known drive. We'll do the exact opposite. So I forget who sent this to me. One of the viewers, one of you guys in the community sent these drives to me. And this is, I think, an Inland. Is it Inland? Some people know who Inland is, but they're not exactly a household name for most people. So again, we've got the same drive bay, the same drive adapter installed. It's 240 gigs. In fact, let me bring it up to the camera and I'll give you a nice close-up of this drive right here. Yeah. Now this drive was brand new in the package. This was a brand new drive. The other one was a used drive somebody sent to me. And as you can see, as I mentioned, the used drive, when we hook it up to USB, it works fine. So what I'm thinking is there may be a BIOS update on the motherboard or a firmware update on the drive if this drive works. So once again, and I got a bunch of these. So we'll just plug that in there. We'll plug this one in here. Slide that in place. And once again, this just closes down like that. Let me grab that power cable. We're going to start all over again. Grab the power cable. The Windows 10 installation media is still installed. I haven't changed anything. Everything's live. You're seeing it all unedited. One take. It's all one take, people. Hit the power button. And we'll go back to, let's see, HDMI. Oh, I got to minimize myself here. A fan making some noise. I don't know which fan it is, but do you see what it's doing? The fan noise, the microphone has a filter on, so you may not hear the noise I'm hearing, but there's a fan making a grinding sound. Let me just take a look just to identify. It's either the CPU fan or the power supply fan, because those are the only two fans this thing has. Sounds like power supply. Yeah. Just smack it a couple times, it'll be fine. So it looks like we're right back to square one again, which is absolutely fascinating to me. It's interesting, isn't it? But we do all this to save money. That's what people tell themselves. And they create voluntarily a completely avoidable situation because they refuse to let something go. For whatever justification, I don't have the money. Ultimately, what I don't have the money is I'm not willing to make the sacrifice. It's not that important to me. And that's fine. That's your time, and it's your time here on Earth, and if that's how you want to spend it, I think that's great. But for me to run a business, it's not an option. I just can't stay in business doing that. If I could, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But if I can't pay the rent and the electricity at the end of the month, among all the other bills, well, I think that sort of becomes like pretty obvious at that point. It's not sustainable. So I'm kind of curious if it's going to get through it this time if I wait. Is it the SSD caddy? No, this is a whole different caddy. I mean, the manufacturer is the same, but it's not literally the same exact caddy. It's a different caddy. Same exact problem, two different drives. You guys want me to do the F9 button in the BIOS? All right, we'll turn the machine off. Oh, I'm looking at a delayed feed, I see. There we go. Now I'll turn it back on and we'll do F9. See if we can get into boot options. Yes. And we'll scroll down, SanDisk Extreme, and we'll try this again. You think it's going to work? You will see it's going to take a little while for that little round circle to start up. There it goes. And we're back to the Windows 10 install. So same as always, click all the same options in the same order. Nothing up my sleeve. See, I don't have a product key. We're going to do Windows 10 Pro. Hit next. Agree to the license agreement. Always choose custom. There's disk 0, unallocated space. I can remove my camera 1 just so you can, whoops, there it goes. You can see everything there. It's all normal. I'm not trying to hide anything. Then I'll hit next right there. And it will partition, format, and install Windows 10. We'll see how long this takes. And what do you think? You think it's going to get through the Windows 10 install this time, or do you think we'll get the same error again? Jason Cordery doesn't think this is going to work. I don't want to make any changes in the BIOS. I want to leave everything the same. The only thing I've changed is the solid state drive. And if the same behavior occurs, then that will lead me more to a BIOS. But I need to see if the problem is going to occur again before I can, I don't want to try and jump ahead of when I might already have the solution. You know, I could just, by jumping ahead like that, you could create a secondary problem. So I'm only going to do that once I know I've worn out my options with the solid state drive. Monty UL contributes $10. Tell us what time it is. It is 10 minutes to 6 in the evening here in Phoenix. Alienware thinks secure boot is the issue. Well, let me ask you this. If this installs without any problems, then how is secure boot the issue? If this goes through the installation just like it's supposed to, just like all the other computers I did that are this configuration, this brand and everything, why is it only this machine? And why is it only this drive? See, until we know that the problem is reproducible regardless of the solid state drive, jumping in to make any changes to the BIOS is basically, it's the equivalent of part starts. You're just jumping at guesses. So I need to first determine, will Windows 10 install properly by swapping out the SSD? If it doesn't, then I agree with you. We need to go into the BIOS and take a look. We may even find a newer BIOS is available. Then I don't have to worry about, oh, if it's a problem with the drive, then what's the problem with the drive? So if Windows 10 installs on this drive, but not this one, and everything else is the same, and we haven't made any changes to the BIOS. So you guys go and make a bunch of changes, and you fix it, you won't know which of your fixes fixed it. You will have learned nothing. So you have to take one step at a time. It's very, very time consuming. And on older hardware, because it takes older hardware longer to do things, it increases the amount of consumption of time that's already quite exhausting. Chris wants to know, do I ever do PC donations? Usually when people want to contribute a computer, if they were to mail a computer to me, it's somewhere between $60 to $100 to mail the computer, at least if you pack it well. If you ship it UPS, it'll almost always be damaged and the computer may not be usable. Then for me to turn around and ship it to somebody else might have exceeded what it would have cost me to just go on Amazon and buy a $150 off-lease Dell with the free shipping. So that doesn't make any sense. And then when you combine that the computer you send may require more RAM, or it may require a solid state drive, then I'm putting more money into it. And by the time it gets shipped out, with the cost of shipping again, you're looking, easily $300 to $400 for a machine that's only worth $150, $200. It doesn't make sense. So what I would recommend, if you're local to Phoenix and there's a way that we can hand it off, that'd be great. But if it has to be shipped, I would recommend you find a local organization or charity that you can contribute to in your community. So we've run into this error now, second time in a row. So that means now we know it's not the solid state drive. I mean, it kind of was, right? Initially, by cleaning the drive, we got past the first problem and got to this problem. Now we swapped the drive out since this one's questionable. We're right back to square one. So my question would be, for me personally, my diagnostic would be, is there perhaps a newer BIOS? Are we trying to put a more advanced operating system on this box than it was ever engineered to run? And was there perhaps a BIOS update, the last BIOS update that came out for this, that perhaps addresses whatever this problem is? And so what I will do is turn the machine back off by holding the power button in. And eventually it'll turn off here. There it goes. I'll turn it back on. And to go into the BIOS, what is it, F2 on this one? F2, I can't remember. But we're going to go into the BIOS and see what the version of BIOS is. That's diagnostics. Escape for the startup menu. That's not what I want. Let's turn it back off again. I always have a hard time remembering on these HPs. Well, it varies. It's not like all HPs use the same BIOS setup keys. It does tell us briefly on the screen. I default to hitting delete. I'm using the wrong keyboard. Oh, no, I'm not. That's the right. I'm on the right keyboard. Let me turn back off. Was it F10? So we don't know that there is a BIOS update available, right? The HP hasn't released a BIOS update for these old computers in a very, very long time. So now that I'm in the BIOS, let me get rid of my camera one here so we can see the whole screen. And let's just take a look at what information we've got in here. We can apply defaults and exit. That's always a safe one. Let's see if that makes any difference. And Doman 2000 recommends that. Absolutely. Resetting to the default settings is highly recommended. And now the machine has powered itself off and it's turning itself back on again and it's initializing. And let's see what it does this time. Now it's trying to boot from the network, but it's already started the booting from the Windows flash drive, the Windows installation flash drive. I see the flash drive is blinking on and off here, so we're just going to wait this out and see what happens. There we go. Let me get rid of camera 1 again so we can see. Let me go full screen for me so I can see. Good, now you can see and I can see. Do the same setup routine here. Install now. Don't have a product key. Windows 10 Pro. End user license agreement. Custom install. Now you see it put 3 partitions on this drive. We're going to delete all of these partitions and reset it back to being completely unallocated space. So there's nothing on the drive, just like it was a moment ago. There we go. So just all unallocated space, totaling 223.6 gigs, which is, you know, it rounds up to 240 gig. It's that's explained in another quick tips video on how gigabytes versus gigabytes and how Microsoft will count it at 1024 per K versus 1000 per K. And versus with the manufacturers always trying to inflate the numbers. The drive isn't shrinking because it's formatted. I've seen some really bad tech journalists explaining what size remains after you format the drive. It's the same size drive after you format it. It's just the mathematical calculation of the available space is done differently in Windows than the drive manufacturers. Drive manufacturers like to use 1000 instead of 1024 because it makes the drive sound bigger. All right, so you know how that works. Back over to camera 1 here. Yates Network says, Carrie, I gotta say, I've never installed Windows like that. I always leave the partitions that it creates for me. I want Windows to do everything fresh and clean. And the reason for that is if the BIOS is set up for UEFI, you're going to see 4 partitions that Windows creates. If you're not, if you're set up on legacy, you're going to see 3 partitions that Windows creates. And so for my installs to go smoothly, and especially on unfamiliar and older hardware, I find it faster and more efficient to always let Windows do what it wants to do based on that particular hardware configuration. And since I very rarely work on 2 of the same machines, this ensures a consistency that the install is done properly to match the hardware rather than forcing a particular configuration, which could end up being a support issue later. Now, if all I did was work on machines that I built and they're all the same, well, that would be a different story entirely. All right, we're going to find out here in a moment what our results are just from resetting the BIOS. We're doing our first boot right now, so we're about to find out. Remember, if you look back at my videos on the Y3K issue that was exposed here, you will never be able to fix it if you left the partitions. You would never fix the problem. So this comes from hitting my head against the wall enough times over the years that I've adjusted the processes that I do. It's not just about ritualization, and it's not about a feeling I have. It's that I got burned by it, and I don't want to get burned by it again. And this ensures that won't happen. So that's why I do it the way I do. Okay, we should be booting off the internal SSD right now. I don't think we got this far before. So it may be something in the BIOS was enabled, well, or corrupted, that was causing this problem. However, we should be UEFI. This should be a modern enough machine, I would think, that I should see those 4 partitions. Although, at the end of the day, does it really make a difference in performance? Not so much. I just got it, want to use it. Ghost Shadow wants to know if I've dented the wall with my noggin. The other way around. I think I dented my noggin with the wall. But this, this is what I enjoy about this job, is I get to see these weird problems, and I can say, I've never seen that before. Wonder how to fix that. And then the process that I use to figure out, which part may be and test is uniquely me. I'm not trying to turn you guys into me. I'm just showing you how I do my job. I'm not looking for your approval. I'm not looking for anything other than to share my experience with you. And then you can make what you want from that. You can take what you want or don't. But to be able to share this experience with you means that you don't have to have the same experience. That if you find yourself in a deja vu situation where you're like, this computer is reminding me of a problem I saw Carrie deal with. What did he do? Chances are you will get to your solution faster by me sharing my experience, regardless of what diagnostic process you choose, just by having a little more information that might guide you to that solution faster. I'm still curious if a newer BIOS version is available, because I always, when I send these out, I want to make sure that the customers that receive them have the latest of everything: drivers, Windows updates, BIOS. And we can find that out here in just a minute. We'll go ahead and finish this install. Again, these are all the same options I choose on all my builds. Say I don't have internet. We'll put a username of user in here, no password, and in just a moment it'll, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Turn all this off, but we'll leave location on. That way it can set the date and time for us automatically with the Windows time servers. There we go. Here we go. Ghost Shadow says, Carrie, some of those old compact computers with the quantum Bigfoot drives were a massive headache. And if you disconnected the drive, the system wouldn't even post. And you had to leave the failed drive connected. Yeah, those quantum Bigfoots, yeah, they were physically large. They were loud. They were small in capacity. And they were slow. They were so slow. I don't know about reliable, because I would usually pull them long before they went bad, just because of how noisy, and the capacity was too small. Noisy, slow, and small. Paul Baxter thinks that's a fast install. I mean, you know what, Paul? It's not bad for a computer as old as this. Chris Garrett said those models had UEFI, but they did not have Secure Boot. Updating the BIOS, you got Secure Boot. And on my model, you had to update to version 3 before you could update to version 5. But we're not done yet, folks. Nate, the shocker, thinks, hey, we fixed it. We're not done yet. Not done yet, but we're certainly making progress. So like I said, I want to find out which BIOS version we have and what's available. So to do that, I'm going to plug the internet. You notice during the install, I keep the internet unplugged, and that's because Windows will force you to create an online Microsoft account during the install if it senses you have an internet connection. So now that we're done with that install, I can pull the Windows 10 installation drive. I can plug my Ethernet cable back in. Well, I guess I'm not plugging it back in. This is the first time I'm plugging it in. Right there. And then I'm going to get rid of camera 1 here for a second so you can see the full screen and what I'm about to do. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, we'll click no on this. That'll eventually go away if we ignore it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go full screen on my side because I'm looking at a very small window on my screen. So now that I've gone full screen, bring up the browser. And we'll just get this out of the way. Great. Let's get rid of that. Now I'll bring it back up one more time. We'll go to Google. And then I'm going to type in CPU-Z. That's the utility I like to get all the information that's in a computer without having to take the cover off and inspect everything. Or if I'm remote, I go down here, it says classic versions. I want the zip file. That means there's no installation required. Dump this advertising. Looking to see if the download's going to begin. It should tell me down at the bottom of the screen. There it goes. It's a pretty small file, just 3.2 megs. Take us about 10 seconds to grab it. And then as soon as it's done, I click once on it. And I'm going to extract that zip file into its own folder here. We'll just go up here to extract, extract all. Oh, it loaded a video driver in the background. That's why the screen blanked out. Windows updates are now running in the background. So I'll hit extract. And then I'll double click on CPU-Z 64-bit. Remember, this is a portable application, or the version that I've just downloaded is portable. And I'll close these other windows because they're just distracting. Let's just close all that. This is what I need right here. We can see this is an Intel Core i5-2500. We can learn what board we've got along with the BIOS version, which it says right down in here, BIOS version of June 9th, 2011. We can see how much memory we've got, and we can see how that memory is made up of how many modules are being used. It's DDR3, and I'm guessing slots 2 and 4 are empty. Yeah, so this is great, especially when you're looking remotely. Sure, we're using onboard graphics here. Yeah, Intel HD graphics. And I'm sure it's continuing to download updates in the background. So looking at the main board and looking at our BIOS version, we can go back to our browser, whatever browser you want to use, and we'll type in support.hp.com. This works with Dell, support.dell.com if you've got a Dell computer. And then we'll go to, let's see, software and drivers. And it says, welcome, what do you have? We've got a desktop. And it says, let HP detect your product. So we'll click that. It's going to download a little app. It says, waiting for actions to be completed. And in just a moment here, we may have to give some permission to let this HP web app run. It depends on how fast your computer is, how fast your internet is. It is going to collect information in order, obviously, to figure out what you've got. So you've got to agree that they can have that information. it downloads this HP Support Solutions file. We click once on that. We'll click yes. And just click your next and agree, whatever it takes to get all the way through this. We want to install, let's install the latest version now. It's a pretty small file, shouldn't take very long. And then we'll hit continue. Allow that to open. It says it's about to do product detection. Again, a lot of people are so paranoid about their privacy, but you're wanting it to inspect the hardware of the machine. It's looking for a HP code that identifies what this machine was built with. It's got an HP tag, or Dell uses a tag number, but each machine it has a unique tag number. Now it shows what we've got right here. It says this is what it's pulling up, an HP Compact 8200 Elite. We'll click once on that. We can see our serial number. It says, well, get rid of the feedback thing here. Now it says we're not finding any drivers for this for Windows 10. So what we want to do is choose a different OS, and we're going to choose Windows, and we'll see if we can find drivers for Windows 8 64-bit instead, and click change. And now let's see if the results, yes. Now we have all these drivers. Now we shouldn't need any of these drivers. Windows 10 is obviously providing everything. But here under BIOS, I'm curious if there's a newer BIOS. This is showing version 5.0.3. If I hit download on this, it says, for the best results, we recommend you use our download and install assistant. I don't want to use their download and install assistant. And they're right here, it says, no thanks, I will download and install manually. In other words, we're going to download this the same way we install everything else. The reason you want to use the download and install assistant is if you're downloading multiple files. Instead of doing one at a time, you can do 10 or 12 all at the same time. Now this is the BIOS file. We're going to open that file. We'll click yes, and it's telling us all about what this file is. We'll hit next and agree to the end user license agreement, and I'll hit next again and next one more time, and then finish. Now what's frustrating is you do have to be a bit of a technical person now to have paid attention to where it put that file it just extracted. So we're going to go to the C drive. It did not put it in the downloads folder. It extracted it to SW setup. And this is the name of the BIOS file here. And these are where all the extracted files are. So to run this, we have to hit, well, I guess we're going to right click, run as administrator maybe. Oh, that's not an exe file. Let me turn the view options on so I can see the file extensions. DOS Flash is executable. Rep setup, I don't know what that is. It's got to be one of those two. Shouldn't have to do it in DOS. What does this do? No, it's not it. I think, let's see. No, it's not going to let it run. There's usually there's a setup, which I don't see in here now. And these HTML files will be like documentation. And the way HP does this is really confusing because I don't see the actual BIOS file in here. Like I see a lot of utilities and, there's a README text and things like that, but I don't actually see the BIOS file. Let me take a look here in the chat room because you guys might be more familiar with this than me. Typically, when I download this and extract it, there's typically an executable file. You double click and it runs within Windows and can update the BIOS in Windows, and I'm not finding it on this one. So let's take a look at the chat. Jet Olson says, I gave you 20 bucks through Super Chat. Hey, Jet, thank you so much. Thank you for supporting the channel. I provided the link earlier, but you can select it by changing the operating system to Windows 7. Oh, I see. So HP, and again, you're not going to really run into this when you use when you build your own computer and you're using like Asus, Gigabyte, whatever, you're doing it yourself. Their support page doesn't work the way HP's and Dell's do because they're meant really for techs. They don't really want end users going in and changing their BIOS. So let me take another look in here one more time. We'll go back to the HP support site. Once again, support.hp.com. And just in case I'm coming back here, when I do this software and drivers option again, I'm going to repeat everything one more time. Let HP detect the product because I didn't write anything down. I can bookmark or favorite the page that finally does come up. You'll see this is going to happen a lot faster since we already have the application downloaded and installed that it requires. And right here, I can just click the little star and make that a favorite. So now if I have to come back here in the future, it'll be a lot easier. So I'm going to choose a different OS and we'll try choosing Windows 7. So first we pick Windows. Then we come over here to Windows 7, 64-bit, and click Change. And now we're going to look at, now there's two BIOSes instead of just one. That's interesting. One's dated June 5th, 2014. That's pretty old. This one right here is dated May 1st, 2019. Let's grab that one. I'll click no thanks. I'll download it manually. Open the file. I'll click next. Accept the license agreement. Hit next. I'm going to take note of this location. And now once again I will close. What was our BIOS on this one? Pretty old. 2011. This BIOS is 8 years newer. How old is this computer? It's much older than I thought. So let's go to that folder again. Only now we'll have two folders inside. Did I just go back into the old one? HPQ flash. Right click, run as administrator. Welcome to the HPQ flash wizard. Click next when you're ready to continue. We're going to close everything out. You don't want any interference from running software. So make sure any applications that you have open or closed, we'll get rid of this. Everything off the screen. Now, It says you want to verify that you're ready to update your system BIOS. Here's the version it wants to update to, and here's the version you've got. That's a significant difference here. Warning, after installing the BIOS version onto the system, prior BIOS versions cannot be installed onto the system. In other words, we can't go backwards. We can only go forwards and click Next to update the BIOS. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. And now it's important you don't touch anything. Leave the keyboard and mouse alone and allow the computer time to do what it needs to do. I don't have to worry about getting the wrong BIOS because HP auto-detected the system and has selected it for me. Not that that doesn't make mistakes, but I've never seen it make a mistake. I suppose it's possible. Thanks to the chat room for the suggestion to choose the Windows 7 option instead of the Windows 8. I don't know why HP does that. I don't even know why the BIOS has anything to do with the operating system. When you're selecting drivers, you obviously need Windows 7 drivers and Windows 8 drivers and Linux drivers, depending on what you've got. But a BIOS is a BIOS is a BIOS, regardless of the OS. So that's a little confusing, but it is something typical from the big pre-built manufacturers. It's not uncommon, unfortunately. It adds to a level of confusion. And once again, they would prefer you would just buy a new computer, and they're gambling that you'll buy another one of theirs. And they would also prefer that an authorized technician do this kind of work because of the risk involved and the understanding it takes. But it's really quite simple, and you do have to be patient. So we're live now. It looks like an hour and 47 minutes so far on this repair. And that is a significant difference in BIOS versions. You know, you're looking at 8 years of evolution that this computer is capable of if it had the right instructions. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're putting those instructions on. Now, those instructions might not be important if we were running an older operating system like Windows 7 or 8. But to make something old work with something that it was never designed to work with, which in this case is Windows 10, HP is still not offering you anything for Windows 10. Even though the machine is fully capable of running Windows 10, as you can plainly see, they don't want you to know that. And they don't want the support calls that come along with it because of how much time and effort has to be taken to make this work. So we're just about done with the BIOS update here. And again, it's important you leave the machine alone, let it do what it needs to do, hands off. It will let you know when it's done. And if you think it's frozen or locked up, find something else to do. Don't come to that conclusion too soon, because BIOS updates can take upwards of 10 minutes on some machines. So if you've walked away from it and it still seems to be locked up 20 or 30 minutes later, that's a different situation. Chances are it's not going to be locked up, and it never was locked up, is that you were too impatient, which is again another reason why HP doesn't want end users doing this. So now this is going to automatically restart the computer in 60 seconds. We can go ahead and force that to happen right now by clicking continue, because the BIOS update is not complete yet. So we're going to restart, and we're going to wait until we get back into Windows. And then depending on the computer, this may restart numerous times or just once. We're going to wait and find out. That no signal that you see on your screen is the computer restarting, and therefore it's not sending a video signal out to the monitor. Right now, that's your monitor that we're sending the signal out to. Now, you did notice, if you go back and you freeze frame that, it talked about validating that new BIOS version. That completes that BIOS update. So we're going to wait until we log back into Windows, and hopefully that little app will say, a little window will pop up and confirm to us that the BIOS update has completed. Not all of them do it. Hopefully this one does. It's a nice peace of mind, but you have to wait for everything to load first. So once again, patience is key here to see if that little window pops up and confirms we now have the latest BIOS. Now, you can continue to use the computer while you're waiting. It's not updating the BIOS anymore. So if I want to go to the download section and run CPU-Z while I'm waiting for something that may not happen, we'll go to the CPU-Z folder and run this and double check what CPU-Z reports as our new BIOS version. Right here on the motherboard tab, this is our BIOS version now. So what difference did that make? Let's close this and let's shut it down. Oh, something else I like to do. I don't want to leave these files behind because an end user may stumble on them and wonder, what's this? And you don't want them flashing their BIOS again. So we're going to delete those files and even empty the recycle bin. So now my question is, we go back into the BIOS and take a look at it. Let's do a complete shutdown here, and I'll wait for the machine to power off, which it just has done. I'm going to turn it back on again, and then we'll start hitting the delete button on the keyboard, and we'll see if there's any obvious changes to the BIOS version here. Oh, I didn't hit it fast enough. Shut it down one more time. Wait for it to shut off. There, it's off. Turn it back on. There we go. I had to hit it twice. Start hitting delete. It is it's booting way too fast. Way too fast. Something I can try. I'm not sure if it'll work, but let's go to the control panel. We'll go to update and security. We'll go to recovery, even though we're not recovering anything. Restart now. Give it a minute. It's not restarting. It's bringing up a restart menu of Windows. So be patient. We're going to do use a device, troubleshoot is what I want, troubleshoot. Advanced options. And I want to go to the BIOS. Startup repair. Oh, so UEFI, with this version of Windows, in order to get the UEFI mode that the new BIOS offers us to work in Windows 10, we have to completely start over again and reinstall Windows 10. And then we'll get the 4 partitions instead of the 3 partitions. So I'm going to go ahead and hold the power button in until this shuts off. And we'll turn that back on. Was I hitting the wrong button? Was I supposed to hit F10, not delete? Is that what I was doing? Yeah, I had to hit F10. Now, it looks exactly the same. If you want to check the system date and time, you know, it's dead on because Windows has set that. Once Windows loads, once you've installed Windows, it goes to the Windows time server and sets it, and it sets it in the BIOS as well. If we let's hit escape here, go through these options, device configuration, storage options. See the max speed, 1.5, it should be 3, but that's interesting. I'm going to change it to 3. I'm not sure why that was at 1.5. Oh, that's eSATA speed. Okay, that's external SATA. Never mind, that doesn't matter because we're not using anything external. Boot order. We're not going to boot from USB or CD, so I'll hit F5 to disable that. And F5 to disable that. And then legacy, that's all good. And then F10 to accept. We'll go over to the right, device security. USB security, all that looks good. This all looks good. I want network boot disabled. F10. Master boot record security is disabled. System security. I don't know if this chip supports virtualization technology, so I'm going to leave that alone because the end user won't use it anyway. Operating system power management looks good. Hardware power management, fine. Thermals, fan idle mode. You can adjust this. I'm going to leave that alone. And advanced power on options, whether or not we want quick boot. I don't see anything about UEFI in here at all. And that's typical of a pre-built. Not going to mess with any of this. This is all fine. Turbo mode is enabled. That's great. Leave that alone. VGA configuration's fine. AMT. So I don't see anything about UEFI mode. So here's what I'm going to do is I will save the changes and exit. And we'll let Windows boot up one more time here. There are 959 people watching live right now. Welcome in, everybody. Give me a shout out. Let me know where in the world are you watching me from? What country are you in? What state? Your physical state. I don't need to know your mental state because you're here. That tells me all I need to know. If we click on, that little thumbs up button, it looks like this. It's right below the video. I appreciate if you do that for me. And if you haven't subscribed, if you want to participate in the live chat, you must be a subscriber to this channel. That's because we get a lot of people that are completely nothing else better to do, trying to draw attention to themselves. They're desperate for attention. Hey, so am I. That's why I created a YouTube channel. It's an idea for you. If you're desperate for attention, if you have a YouTube account, just create a YouTube channel. Trust me. Over time, you'll get all the attention you want and even more attention you don't want. Chris Garrett says that the UEFI setting is in security. I didn't see it. You have folks at Trenton, Michigan, London, UK, upstate New York, Florida, Ohio, Kansas, Tennessee, Vermont, New Jersey, Ventura, California, Pennsylvania, Iowa. Robert says he's joining us from Eagan, Minnesota. Montreal, Quebec, Canada. More from Canada, Milford, Iowa, Jackson County, Indiana. Greetings from Missouri, says Proteva. And Ben watches us in Kentucky. Rakshit Patel in North Carolina. Studley is in the Netherlands. Crazy Vera's in Texas. Toyin joins us from Jamaica. Jamaica man. Oh, it's terrible. I shouldn't do that. Junebug joins us in Queens, New York. Linda Hudson watches us from Lexington, North Carolina. Bandit Nev is in Adelaide, Australia. Crikey. Got folks, Greg McDonald, a fellow Michigander. Caesar watches us from Portugal. Ron Toomey just says USA. John Paul Bacon is in Federal Way, Washington, and David Reed joins us from Alberta, Canada. Sarge Tech is from Central Georgia. And we've got Johnny Belcher in Kansas City, Kansas, not to be confused with Kansas City, Missouri, which are also side by side, by the way. Denmark, that's where Michael Hansen watches us from. Zvi joins us from Israel, and Tom Jackson in Denver, Colorado. Doom watches us from Earth. Well, of course, if your name is Doom, that's only one planet in the universe that matches that name. Princeton, Indiana is where Dean is joining us from, as well as West Bloomfield, Michigan, very close to where I grew up. G. Wyson is watching us from West Bloomfield, Michigan. Ray Burke from Oregon City, Oregon. And we got more viewers here from Florida, Texas. Chris Garrett said, if you go into the security tab, the last option under drive lock security, oh, that's on his. Well, I just want to try something. I'm going to try something here. But first, just a couple other shouts out here to viewers and where you're watching from. Robert Connors is in Alpena, Michigan. And Jim watches us from Wilmington, Delaware. Basil Prout from Hollywood, Florida. East Hampton, Massachusetts is where Dick R. watches us from. Nick Poverman in Belmar, New Jersey. And Robert Grove joins us from Maryland. Welcome in, everybody. Eugenio is in Chicago. Servinas is in Iran. And Gil Garcia in Texas. Look at that. Pretty crazy. Love it. Thank you guys for shouting out where you're watching from. Tron watching from Sydney, Australia. And Disney Fan is in Phoenix, Arizona. You must be crazy to be in Phoenix, Arizona. Bill joins us in Rhode Island and Matthew in Easton, Pennsylvania. And Tony joins us from Virginia. And Scott watches us from New Zealand. Where One joins us from Kavola, Finland. All over the world. All over the world. How cool is that? All right, here's what I want to try and do. I want to try and reinstall Windows 10. I want to see just blindly if I'm going to get those 4 partitions or 3 partitions. Now, this should solve all of our problems. It shouldn't matter if I use this drive or the other one. To keep things simple and to keep things moving along, I'm just going to leave everything as it is, turn it off, and we're going to put the Windows 10 flash drive back on. We're going to start the computer back up. Just put Windows 10 right back there like this. We'll turn the machine back on and we'll do F9 so we can select the flash drive as the boot option. So I'm just hitting F9 right now. There it is. Now it does say EFI boot. So EFI, UEFI, same thing. So we're going to select the SanDisk. You have to boot the Windows installation media in UEFI mode in order to install Windows in UEFI mode. So if the BIOS prior to the update only supported legacy mode, the only way that I'm aware of, and if you know another way, please let me know, to convert legacy to UEFI on your Windows install is to reinstall. You got to wipe everything out and start over again because it needs to create that extra partition as part of the EFI mode. AC's drafting with a $20 contribution. Right on, AC. Thank you so much. I will tell you that when I first started doing this YouTube channel, I was doing a video or 2 a month. And I have a ton of ideas to do for videos, but I don't want to always do the same thing over and over. And so there's been a few people who don't quite understand what it is to be a content creator, or they don't respect that it's my channel. And they make some comments with regard to me doing things other than computer repair. Well, I'm not a one-trick pony. I'm more interested in other things. So I will show computer builds, computer repair. I'll do reviews of products, including the Munch Pack reviews, the junk food reviews. In fact, I'm going to spin off a whole separate channel just for me to try junk food because I enjoy that. And for people that are like, oh, I don't like, it looks like Kerry's run out of ideas and he's talking about other stuff. Well, Kerry does more than one thing. And because the massive amount of quantity of video that I'm doing, I would drive myself even further insane than I already am if all I did were repairs. Like, I have to do more than that. And if you're not interested in the other side projects I do, please leave it for other people. Other people enjoy it. Somebody made a snide comment that said, I remember when all Kerry used to do was just build computers. I also remember when all Kerry had was 36 subscribers would be my response to you. So in order for the channel to grow and in order for me to keep producing content without driving myself more crazy than I already am, I have to do videos that I'm in the mood to do. And that keeps me fresh and it keeps me interested in coming back. So the videos are not necessarily made for anybody other than me, and I do hope that you enjoy what I do. And if you don't, just skip that one. It's not for you, but you don't have to get nasty about it. Everything comes around. Just sometimes I need a break and I need to do something different. And believe it or not, some people like that. But getting back to where we were, we're going to do reinstall Windows 10 here, which has been patiently waiting for me. And we're going to do the same exact setup. And when we get to the custom install mode, I'm going to delete. You'll see there's 3 partitions. I'm going to delete those. Then I'm going to let Windows 10 install again. And then ideally it'll be in UEFI mode. And my thanks to the people that support the channel with contributions or sharing links or using my Amazon links. If you're buying anything on Amazon, it's because of you guys that I can do so many more videos. I was only doing, 2 a month back when I had a few dozen subscribers because that's all I could afford to do. Oh, look, we have 4 partitions. It appears it's already in UEFI mode. Now, there is a way to know if you're in UEFI mode by looking at a registry setting. But this certainly appears that we have the 4 partitions, and the 4 partitions is an easy way to tell. James Duffy says, hey, Carrie, you're a beautiful man. I love what you do, no matter what it is. Thank you, James. That's very kind of you. I appreciate that. You're not holding me up to meeting some pre-qualified approval. I mean, the whole point of this is, for me anyway, to enjoy what I'm doing and that I'm not working for a specific viewer. However, if a viewer wants to pay the bills, I'll be happy to work for you if the price is right. And I do have a number of viewers that have been very, very generous and have enabled me to continue making these videos without having to do the whole membership thing. And it's because of them why the videos remain completely free, including the live interactions. Those handful of viewers who have been extraordinarily generous are doing nothing but enabling me. My deepest gratitude to those people. They know who they are. Thank you so much for it. And even the smaller contributions, with enough people voluntarily submit those smaller contributions, they do add up, and that just buys me more equipment and more hardware and things to do more videos with. In fact, I think I'm going to have a couple machines for sale here, but I'll talk more about that later because it's going to be a few weeks. Did I remember to unplug the network cable? I did not unplug the network cable. That's a good catch. Yeah, I would need to. But I think we're already in UEFI mode. And here's how I'm going to tell. I'm just going to turn the machine off. Just hold the power button in and shut it off. Mitch Morrison's in the house. Hey, there's Mitch, the man Morrison. I might have to do Friday's show alone. I'm coming down with a cold, and I don't want to give it to anybody. So may not have Mitch here this Friday. If I'm feeling a little bit in my throat, my nose is a little runny. You might hear it in my voice. Hopefully this will go through my system quickly. I don't know. That's your warning, Mitch. It might I might have to do the show alone for safety. Don't want to get you sick. Why are all those drives there? Larry wants to know. Those aren't drives. Those are partitions. If you walk into the men's room, do you just want to see toilets lined up against the wall, or would you like there to be a partition? Those aren't separate restrooms. Well, I guess in a way they kind of are, right? When you go into the bathroom, a public restroom, and you go to use the facility, each little room inside of the restroom is a part of that restroom. That's what partitions are. That's one drive that's been segmented out. In much the same way that one restroom may be segmented out to separate little restrooms with little walls and doors. But you never heard anybody explain it that way before. Fritzer contributes $5. Hey, Fritzer, thank you for that. Okay, so if we want to find out if we're in UEFI mode, it's been a while since I've done this. I'll just go to Google. How? Oh, wrong. Let's do it so you can see it. Let's go over to. Let's turn off camera 1 so you can see the whole screen. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this because I don't have this stuff all memorized. It's nothing I would even have to look for unless it was an older machine like this. But we'll just bring up the browser. Whatever your browser is, doesn't matter. And I'll type in how to, gotta use the right keyboard. How to determine, well, you know what? I don't want to use Bing though. Let's go to Google, be a little scatterbrained. How to determine UEFI Win 10. Let's see what it says. Press Win R, type MSInfo32 and hit enter. All right, let's do that. Win R, MSInfo32. And right here, it says BIOS mode UEFI. See how easy that is? Super easy, barely an inconvenience. So that means this machine is now properly configured, and it's just a matter of making sure we go to Windows Update and grab all those updates that it's missing. And I'll put Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 Optimizer on it. And then this will go out to a veteran or somebody in need. And if that's you, leave a comment in the message below. Remember, in the comment section below the video, not during the live video, explaining why you should be selected and why you would benefit more than somebody else. And you've got to be within the United States. And the community pays for this. The community is paying for the shipping. The community is paying for the computer and the SSD upgrade. I'm volunteering my time and I'm just putting it together. And I will have 3 of these left. So this is one of 3 remaining. But this one had a problem months ago and I set it aside to revisit it when I had time. Today I had time. So I'm glad you were able to join me and we could explore this together. Rockin' Rob contributes $2. He says, don't forget to check your PayPal after the broadcast. Hey, I can look at my PayPal on my phone right now. I enjoy giving people the credit they deserve when they're help supporting what I'm doing here. And it shows Rockin' Rob sent $25. It says, loving your Monday, July 5th broadcast. Keep doing what you're doing. Until next time, peace. Very cool. And $10 came in through PayPal from George Paulson. Says it's been a blast. And $10 again from George Paulson saying this is fun. Hey, thank you for that. And $25 came in from Frank Kukowski. And he just says, I do some of the upgrades myself, and I've learned so much more from you regarding terms, definitions, and nomenclature. Thank you, Carrie. Right on. Well, thanks to all of you guys. It's again, because of you, I can make more content more often. Even when I'm sick, here I am, just plugging away. All right, I think that's going to wrap up today's video. We're just at about, what are we, 2 hours? Over 2 hours, something like that. 2 hours and 15 minutes with 853 people watching. That's a great turnout. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. Let me go full screen so I can do a proper goodbye here. Yeah, so I'm going to just finish the updates. And somebody's going to get this computer. It'll be a great little machine. You see how fast it boots? But again, if this was a new machine, I wouldn't have had to go through all this process. Like the whole software side of a new build would have been done by now, or at least would have been advancing faster. So that's just sort of the downside working with old stuff. And luckily there was a BIOS update that addressed these issues and made the machine much more useful than how it was. Gainsy95 with a 10-pound contribution. Hey Gainsy, thank you. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to my friends in blue. Thanks to those of you who are not yet blue. All you got to do is be friendly, be supportive, say hello in the chat room, and I will turn you blue. You don't have to do anything other than be nice and show up. Or maybe show up and be nice, but actually I'd prefer if you were just nice all the time. The world has a shortage of nice people. Seems that way anyway. So I like that we have such a large, rare collection of them here. And I'm so glad you're a part of it. And for everybody watching all over the world, again, I appreciate the shouts out. Lets me know. It kind of hits home just how far this broadcast is going. If you can imagine being live on stage in front of 800, 900 people, it doesn't feel real until those people start talking back at you, right? And you're like, oh, wait a minute, it's more than one guy or gal. And it's sometimes those little reality checks I need from time to time that keeps my clothes on. All right. Thank you guys again for watching, and for all the contributions during today's broadcast. Thanks again for enabling me to continue doing this with greater frequency and with more variety. I will see you all again very, very soon. And until then,